So another thing we need to take into consideration is what's called avoidable and unavoidable costs. Avoidable costs are costs associated with a particular alternative that will be eliminated if the alternative is eliminated. Avoidable means if I choose one over the other, then the cost of the other that I didn't choose will go away. Okay? Whereas unavoidable costs are costs that will continue regardless of the alternative selected. These are costs that are associated with, it doesn't matter what I choose, I'm still going to have to pay it. Now, I care more about the avoidable costs because they're going to be different between alternatives. Unavoidable just means that they're not different between alternatives, so they're irrelevant. Let's see an example here. You're getting ready to take a 500-mile trip and you're trying to decide whether to fly or drive. You know that it'll cost you $1,000 per year. It normally costs you $1,000 per year for your car, plus an extra 10 cents per mile to operate your car. Based on the 20,000 miles that you've driven for each year that you've had the car, you calculate the total cost to be 15 cents per mile. So again, that's the 20,000 miles divided by the $1,000. So that's 5 cents plus the 10 cents per mile to operate your car. That's where the 15 comes from. Now you're getting wind. There's a special for $65 for round trip airfare to the place that you're going. Now let's talk about this and see which one we would choose. So first and foremost, cost to drive versus cost to fly. That's the decisions that we're making. That's alternative A versus alternative B. Now the cost to fly is really easy because it tells us straightforward. It's $65. Okay. Let's talk about how much it would cost to drive. Now, at first you may look at this and go, well, it's 15 cents per mile. If we take 15 cents per mile, multiply it by the 500 miles for the trip, it's going to cost me $75. And you might think based on that you shouldn't be driving because, again, it's cheaper to go the flying method. However, that's not necessarily the case. A lot of it has to do with the fact that you have this $1,000 per year. The $1,000 per year, you're going to have to pay regardless of you taking this trip or not. So that's an unavoidable cost. Because it's an unavoidable cost, we really need to get rid of it out of our decision-making ability when we look at these things. So really what we're looking at is the 10 cent per mile, because that's the only thing that differs between the two alternatives, versus, times the 500 miles, which is going to give us $50. So in reality, it would be better for us to drive in this situation versus to fly. That's the better option. Now, on top of unavoidable and avoidable cost, we also have this thing that's called sunk cost. Sunk cost is a cost that's been incurred in the past, and these are costs that are not or shouldn't be relevant to any decision that you make. These are things that you can't get back. A lot of times we tend to do this. We actually use the information or the fact that we've done something in the past to make decisions about the future. And in reality, that's not a good thing to do. That's actually what's called a sunk cost fallacy. And that's the differences between avoidable and unavoidable as well as sunk costs.